Denver city leaders reject a contract for an airline running deportation flights out of Colorado.
I am not going to fund the deportation industrial complex anymore with our city dollars.
President Trump got pardon blocked by the U.S. Constitution, so he turns to a familiar tactic to free his friend Tina Peters, whining about it. 9 News investigates whether it's dangerous for 988 crisis line operators to be juggling multiple chats with Coloradans who may be about to take their lives.
I was in 2 high-risk chats with 2 high-risk minors, and they expect us to respond to each message in 59 seconds.
And tonight, we celebrate generosity, along with the courage to ask for help with the holidays.
It's okay. Everybody's struggling, and it's okay to seek that help.
All that tonight on Next. Denver City Council is trying to throw up roadblocks for a small airline that runs deportation flights for ICE here in Colorado. Our Angeline McCall starts us off explaining how it will be difficult for Denver to stop what Key Lime Air is doing.
It's a small airline that you may not have heard of until now.
We know that this is not acceptable, and we cannot let Key Lime Air get away with it.
Activists with immigrant rights groups, including Aurora Unidos CSO, will not stop talking about Key Lime Air.
They're making money off of deporting and transferring immigrants, separating them from their family.
The organization Human Rights First said that last month, Key Lime operated 11% of the charter planes for deportation or detention transfers.
It's families being separated and tormented. Children, mothers, fathers, our neighbors that are being harmed.
And while their headquarters are in Centennial, their business also takes them to Denver.
This is where the rubber starts to hit the road when we start to talk about what are we going to do in Denver about what's happening at the federal level.
Council members on Monday evening found a contract in front of them that would allow Key Lime to lease a 1,200 square foot storage space for equipment.
And that what we invest in is a value document. And at this point in time, with the current actions by Key Lime Air, there is no way ethically or morally that I can vote affirmatively.
Council's no vote will not change the airline's flights. The vote means more about values, less about operations.
We have to make those changes, and this is, one of those steps, but it doesn't negate the fact that these flights will probably still continue.
I don't want to have my name. I have to sign these deals when we're done Tuesday morning. I will not have my name as Amanda Sandoval on a Key Lime thing that says we are deporting people and we support that. And I feel very, very, very adamant about that.
It's a result activists have been asking for. It's a small step with more they hope to come.
Councilmember Flynn was the only person to vote no on this resolution in City Council this evening, saying that rather than leasing their own space, the airline will instead use a common space area at DIA that they don't have to pay for. This contract would have required payment. In a statement, Key Lime CEO told us that passenger and flight operations would not be impacted. Kyle.
Angela, you see some of these values judgments also in the way that law enforcement works, right? Denver police say that they're not going to proactively assess, help ICE operations, whereas like Douglas County Sheriff's Office, you'll see them in other municipalities helping out ICE.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, right, like exactly what the impact here is, because like you mentioned, Kyle, this is more of a value vote versus sort of overall result vote. But overall, they say this is kind of a first step. Ultimately, activists really want Key Lime to stop doing these deportation flights, ultimately, so no more, right? But we'll see if that ever happens.
Yeah. All right, Angeline McCall, thank you. President Trump talked about Tina Peters today for the first time since the president issued a so-called pardon trying to get her out of state prison in Colorado last Thursday. It's a purely symbolic move. President doesn't have power to pardon people on state charges. In fact, today, President Trump did not even mention his supposed pardon of Tina Peters. He just ranted about Colorado's governor refusing to pardon her. And the president made a series of false claims in the process.
Poorly run state of Colorado with a governor who's incompetent, and frankly with a governor that won't allow our wonderful Tina to come out of a jail, in a high-intensity jail, because she caught people cheating on an election and they said she was cheating. She wasn't cheating. She went over, she looked at one of the election scams going on, And because she did that, they put her in jail for 9 years.
It's going to take a minute to unpack those false claims, but I feel like this is important. So maybe we can just kind of like baseline set again about what's happening right now with Tina Peters. Trump claims that Peters caught people cheating on an election. That is not true. Tina Peters did not uncover evidence of election fraud or an election scam. Her criminal plot to breach election systems was an attempt to find evidence of Trump's claims, but it failed to produce that evidence. Trump said there that Tina Peters was accused of election cheating because she uncovered cheating. That also is false. Peters was accused of breaking a variety of other state laws tied to that election system breach, where she gave an employee's security badge to one of her fellow conspiracy theorists and allowed that person access to voting equipment. Trump also falsely claimed today that Colorado's Democratic governor is the one who put Tina Peters in jail. Not true. Peters was charged by a Republican prosecutor, convicted by a jury in Deep Red Mesa County, convicted on 4 felonies, attempting to influence a public servant and conspiracy to commit criminal impersonation. That plus a couple misdemeanors. Peters has never been accused of election cheating herself, as Trump claims, although Peters was accused of election incompetence when she was the county clerk. She failed to collect and count the ballots in the drop box right outside her election office. Those 574 ballots were only discovered in the drop box the following election year. Peters initially took responsibility for the error, then later said that she was the victim of a conspiracy that was set up to make her look foolish. Voters in Colorado will decide next year whether to increase the penalties for fentanyl-related crimes. The initiative from the conservative group Advance Colorado just qualified for the ballot. Under current law, it's a felony to possess more than 4 grams of fentanyl. Less than 4 grams, it's usually a misdemeanor. The proposed measure would make it a felony to possess any amount of fentanyl. People convicted of trying to sell fentanyl would face a mandatory sentence of 8 to 32 years in prison. Advance Colorado says the state needs to get tough on fentanyl to reduce overdoses. Critics of the ballot measure say that it could hit people with a felony even if they don't know that a pill or powder contains fentanyl, and ramps up punishment on people with drug issues. The stress of the holidays can compound issues for people who are hurting. Thankfully, Colorado has the 988 crisis line. If you call, you will get someone's undivided attention to help you. If you text for help, that's not the case. Tonight, 9 News investigates why. Here's Marshall Zellinger.
I always say, like, I'm a salesperson for hope.
Crisis specialists answer calls, texts, and online chats for 988 and Colorado's Crisis Services line. For the first 9 months of the year, call takers like Riley McConnell answered 183,000 calls.
For a lot of people, that's what keeps them alive long enough to get through tomorrow. So that's my job, is to keep people alive.
Riley used to be one of the crisis specialists on the other end of the line for Solari, the company that operates crisis lines in Colorado. Kaylee Cameron also used to answer calls and texts.
It's a crisis prevention service putting their employees in crisis.
They are 2 recently fired employees who wanted 9 News Investigates to review policies they feel need to change for the welfare of those reaching out for help and the employees giving the help.
I was in 2 high-risk chats with 2 high-risk minors, and they expect us to respond to each message in 59 seconds.
One of the policies by Solari is that crisis counselors are expected to handle 2 text or chat conversations at the same time, unless a supervisor deems it to be complex, and texts need to be answered in no more than 1 minute.
It's hard to form a response in an empathetic, caring way, let alone respond to 2 people in 59 seconds in that way.
National guidance from 988 Lifeline last year does not require 2 conversations at one time. While it may be helpful, it is important to maintain a high quality of care for each individual who is seeking support. This can be difficult when managing 2 conversations at once.
I've worked inpatient, outpatient, 988, and I've never been overwhelmed like I was the night that I was put on text and chat.
For the first 9 months of the year, Solari crisis specialists answered 25,000 texts or online chats.
Did you ever confuse 2 chats where you gave certain information that meant you were meant for the other one?
A couple times. And as you can imagine, they disconnected.
Why would it happen?
Because I'm just having to go so fast.
Should Solari be requiring crisis counselors to take 2 if 988 says it should be up to the individual if they can handle 2?
That's a good question.
We wanted to take our questions to Solari, the Arizona-based company Colorado has contracted with to handle 988 and crisis calls.
They're doing a very good job.
Instead of Solari agreeing to an interview,
we're accountable for what Solari does.
We were offered the person responsible for overseeing Solari, 988 Colorado Director Gordon Coombs.
You know, Solari is requiring these crisis specialists to handle 2 at a time.
That's what I understand, yeah.
And you're okay with that?
Yeah, and if we need to reevaluate that, I'm perfectly fine continuing to assess that.
He says Solari is exceeding the goals set by the state by answering calls and texts within 20 seconds. Sometimes callers can be put on hold after being asked a few questions to determine if they are safe to wait.
That means the call's been answered?
According to the metrics, right?
Even though they got no help necessarily, like no true
That's
conversation
correct.
yet.
That's correct.
National 988 guidelines from last year say simply asking callers to determine if they are in crisis or safe and placing them on hold if they are safe doesn't yield good results.
Is it safe to put someone on hold to wait for a crisis specialist instead of going to a backup call center?
Again, we wanted to ask Solari directly about this. Coombs told us it happens with 6% of calls. Those callers are checked on every 2 minutes, and that callers sent to a backup call center hang up at a higher rate.
I'd rather somebody be in communication in contact with our contact center here in Colorado, where they're being checked on instead of being rolled over into a national backup where they could drop off and not get any help.
Crisis looks different to everyone.
Despite criticizing internal policies she wants to see changed, Riley would still call or text 988 for help.
There are still incredible, compassionate people working the lines that will do everything that they can.
Are the policies because of staffing? We asked the state for some numbers. There are 183 people who work Colorado's 988 line. The state, though, would not tell us how many vacant jobs there are, telling me what's relevant is that Solari meets and exceeds goals. In an email, Solari said based on the nature of my questions with the state, the company would not participate in an on-camera interview, but defended its practices by saying routine audits consistently show that the company exceeds expectations. For Next, I'm Marshall Zellinger.
Have to thank you. You are making Christmas happen for thousands of kids in Denver. Your latest Word of Thanks micro-giving campaign raised more than $65,000 to buy holiday gifts for kids in Denver's public housing. 6th year that you have done this. Your relentless generosity week after week has raised nearly $17 million for nonprofits across Colorado. Right now, we're building out our schedule of giving for 2026. If you know of a wonderful nonprofit that is doing work to make life better in Colorado, tell me about them. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just email next@9news.com, text next to 303-871-1491. Xcel wants everybody to know that they may preemptively shut off power along the Front Range Wednesday, learning from past mistakes in communication about high wind risk.
The women, for once, gets to shop free, either something for themselves or for their children.
Parents struggling with finances this holiday season find help and understanding. Next. Xcel is warning that power may be preemptively shut down for parts of the Front Range Wednesday due to extreme wind. This is part of the wildfire mitigation plan put in place following the Marshall Fire. Xcel is trying to over-communicate after criticism during chaos the first time they tried to do one of these shutoffs in high winds last April. Xcel is required to give 2 days' notice to emergency responders and customers and have a plan to restore power quickly, especially for critical customers like people with medical needs. Chris Bianchi, the fact that they only did it once last year, once so far this year, if it happens, suggests that this is reserved for very rare events.
Yeah, and of course, Kyle, the difference between last week and this week, last week we had snow cover. This week we don't have that benefit, so fire danger will be considerably higher this week compared to a week ago. So there's a high wind watch. This is for Wednesday and Wednesday night. This includes the foothills, including Boulder, as well as West Denver Metro, Fort Collins. 60 to 90 mile an hour winds. I will say that the mountains, that's where you're talking about the 80 to 90 mile an hour winds for Fort Collins, Boulder, and the West Metro area. Most likely about 60 to 70 mile an hour winds. Strong stuff, but the bigger concern, of course, again, no cover here from the snow, and that means that fire danger will be especially high. So those winds can be very gusty for us. Again, it starts on Wednesday. In the metro area, I-25 corridor, those winds strongest between 3 p.m. and midnight on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, those winds gradually relax through the day on Wednesday. Other story today, we topped out at 68. tying a daily record, 7th straight day at or above 60 degrees. We're going to tack on 2 more days at or above 60 degrees, Tuesday and Wednesday, before we briefly cool down on Thursday.
Some families struggling with finances got a chance to shop for Christmas presents today and never pull out a wallet. That's next. December is the brightest of seasons for some, and it's also a time of worry and sadness for families that are barely getting by. Our Byron Reed introduces us to a group working hard to make the holidays brighter.
Hi.
December is the time of year when most people are busy shopping.
Getting some Christmas gifts.
But for Brittany Ledesma,
Thank you.
it's a time to slow down and give thanks.
December means to me of giving and just being grateful for what we do have than what we don't have.
Ledesma is a single mom and participant in the Empowerment Program in Denver, a licensed mental health and drug treatment program that helps individuals get back on their feet.
For empowerment to come together and make this organization for struggling parents and to help them get what they need for their kids is huge.
The group is hosting their annual Santa's Elves Shopping Day so participants can pick up free gifts for their children and grandchildren.
It was mainly to make possible that women could get things for themselves at Christmas and then also to be able to provide for their children. That really was how it all began, and it took off like wildfire.
Sister Marianne Figlino is the organizer of the event. She believes days like this help when times are tough.
As you know, prices have risen, and a lot of this stuff is out of reach for so many of these women.
Figlino and her elves purchase items like toys, books, and clothing to make the season special for their families.
It's an amazing program only because the women for once gets to shop free, either something for themselves or for their children. And the best feedback I like is, oh, I've always wanted this.
Books, we love books.
For moms like Brittany, the day is about spreading joy.
So I think that's what Christmas is really about.
And taking the time to say thank you for helping hands.
Really take it in and appreciate it and value it and strive from it, that it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to accept help.
For next,
you want to go check out the cookies?
I'm Byron Reed.
Now, that's a very big example of something that we were talking about here the other night, about how the negativity and the division that often dominates local news could be balanced this holiday season by more stories about the power of connection, how even simple gestures can change lives, can bring people together. A viewer named Kate in Highlands Ranch wrote back immediately to tell us about her neighborhood's holiday tradition, and this past weekend was their 23rd annual Progressive Dinner. It's where neighbors open up their homes to have a big holiday meal together. You have one course at each house. You go house to house to house. The whole street gets in on it. The kids make luminaries to light the way between houses. Kate told us, quote, small connections mean so much. And she said that this dinner has become a way for neighbors to make some lasting friendships. So I would love to continue to hear from you about connections, big and small, that have improved your life. If you've reached out to somebody else has reached out to you, but something that's really made an impact and an impression. We'd like to add more of those stories to the news for balance. Email next at 9news.com or text us 303-871-1491. Back with your feedback next. Feedback via text. Great job explaining the blatant lies by President Trump regarding Tina Peters. Texter goes on, they can't deny the truth behind your explanations. Well, of course they can, and they probably will. But the fact is, so long as we have the ability and the privilege to stand here and to tell you the truth, tell you the facts, as opposed to pretending that opinions balance out facts, we're happy to do it. See you next time.